I loved your book. Start us out by telling us the story about Henry Hudson when he first got here in the Albany area in 1609.
Well, he had come up the river hoping to find a northerly passage to the Orient. Seems very strange now, but it seemed likely at the time. And when there were natives and they seemed reasonably friendly, they'd invite them on board and traded foodstuffs.
Aboard the Half Moon.
Exactly.
Here in Albany, off the shore.
Off the shore. And in the case in Albany, it's described in Jouet, who was the first mate. In his diary, it tells they bring natives on board and give them wine and aqua vita, which is brandy, and they found out, and also the natives found out, they couldn't hold their liquor. Now, Dutch people are hard drinking people, so they found that pretty interesting, or at least funny. Unfortunately, they took advantage of it when they were trading. But anyway, that's one of the instances.
So that Henry Hudson would invite the Native Americans aboard for wine on the Half Moon.
Well, in a sense, really more for trading, and then gave them something to drink.
Yeah.
So,
your expertise, your book focuses on how and what the Dutch cooked and ate when they arrived here in the colonies. Well, what were they eating?
Well, actually, in the Netherlands, they were eating better than their neighbors. For instance, they ate more vegetables than the rest of Europe at that time. And already then, the Dutch were known as the horticulturalists of Europe. And now you can go to Price Chopper or Hereford and see beautiful peppers, Holland peppers. We still are known for our horticulture. So when they came here, they brought their seeds, their tree stock, but also their cattle, and started kitchen gardens. And really what it comes down to, imitated life in the Netherlands in the new colony.
So, vegetables. What else?
Well, there was an abundance of meat here, game. And they were, in the Netherlands, a dairy country, so they brought cows and ate porridges. Milk, of course, was hard to keep, so they cooked it up and made porridges and so forth. And that was very much a part of their diet. Pancakes.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. Fish too?
Of course.
All right, and they drank a lot of beer.
And the more affluent then would drink wine. And wine was imported here from Holland. It came via Holland to the colony.
So even in the 1600s, the water in the Netherlands was so polluted, beer was a safer drink.
Exactly. Holland has the canals. The canals and the rivers were used to get rid of not only sewage, but tanners would throw their waste in there. Everything went in the river. So you took your life in your hands if you drank the stuff.
If you drank the water. You even have a picture in your book of an orphanage in the Netherlands, and they're serving the children beer. I mean, that's
right.
It was that commonplace. All right, some of the other foods, in fact, that the Dutch colonials introduced to this country. Cookies?
Cookies. Yes. And that's where the American word cookie comes from. We just yesterday talked to a couple of Englishmen, and they told me that all they had eaten today was 3 biscuits, but of course what they meant was cookies. It's biscuit is the British word for cookie, and cookie is very American. And the Dutch brought the custom of baking cookies here.
The Dutch brought coleslaw?
Coleslaw. Col in Dutch means cabbage, slaw, or slaw is slaw, as we say it. They made a very nice dressing of melted butter mixed with vinegar, a little sugar, touch of salt on the shredded cabbage. And we have an account of that. Peter Kalm says it's better than you imagine. And it is very good.
The Dutch brought donuts here?
Donuts, at the time called Olie Koek. And that's the forerunner of the donut.
You're Dutch?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
you came here in the 1960s, you say?
Yes, yes.
All right. There's a traditional stew the Dutch eat on Independence Day, which is October 3rd. What's the story behind that?
It's actually the day that the city of Leiden was liberated from the Spanish in the 80-year war. And the Spaniards left behind their cooking pots that had a stew of root vegetables. And traditionally, we eat this hutspot, as it is called in Dutch, on that day. And they were liberated by the Geuzen, the water beggars, I think is the English word, who brought white bread and herring. So we eat hutspot, white bread and herring on that day.
Is this something they brought with them, then, the Dutch, when they came to the colonies? Because the independence was, what, in the 1500s sometime from the Spanish?
1574 was that particular liberation. The 80-year war went on till 1648.
Your book also is a great history of Albany. I mean, Albany went back and forth from being Dutch and English and Dutch and English. But the whole time, the residents in Greater Albany pretty much just stayed Dutch and lived the Dutch lifestyle, didn't they?
Definitely. And the same man who talks about coleslaw, Peter Kalm, who came here as an assistant of Linnaeus, tells the Dutch in Albany are very different from the English. They have their own customs. And that's really what you see in the old recipe books, which are so fabulous because they're not only little recipes telling you how to make things, but they tell that customs we had in Holland were brought here, like making a drink of wine and eggs when a baby is born, was done here as well. We know it because it's in those old books.
And the back of your book has a number of Dutch colonial recipes.
Yes.
In it.
Yes.
All right. Let's talk about beer some more. It's interesting, and it again, you see, it seemed to play an important role in the Dutch colonial lifestyle. You say in your book that beer sort of introduced taxes to New Yorkers into the capital region.
Yes, in a sense. The foodstuffs that were so important to the population needed to be regulated, like bread needed to have a certain weight and a certain price, so people weren't cheated. Beer, when people drank beer, tappers had to pay a tax to have the privilege of selling beer to the populace.
This was back in the 1600s.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, taxes are nothing new.
Nothing new in New York, yeah. They haven't gotten tired of them yet. And the government regulated the price of beer.
Yes, and of bread as well.
And the currency at times was primitive. I mean, there was silver, but I think you mentioned in your book also beaver skins.
You could. Yes, there wasn't the kind of coinage and paper money we have now. So you paid with the equivalent in beaver skin or in wampum shells that the Indians strung, particular shells on Long Island.
The colonists were good bakers.
Yes.
Even used their baking skills to trade with the Indians?
Yes. And if you weren't officially a baker during the trading season, everybody started baking and trading with the Indians, and it created a grain shortage at times. So then an ordinance would be written forbidding to trade because there wasn't enough bread left over.
There was a ban on trading cookies or wheat bread, I guess the Indians liked to the Indians in Albany.
Exactly.
And it was because it was in short supply and they didn't want to share it with the Indians.
It wasn't the sharing. There wasn't enough for the colonists. So trading then became sort of a luxury. If you're starving, let's just get something to eat.
All right, let's talk about these waffles and these pancakes. I mean, this sounds pretty luxurious. Again, we're talking about the 1600s, but the Dutch were cooking, making waffles and pancakes?
Yeah. And they brought their implements. And, of course, that's the fun. We still have them. They've, like those recipe books, they've been handed down through the generations. And at Cherry Hill or at the Van Allen House in Kinderhook, or particularly at Kralo. There are all these remnants of Dutch life that we can see today. And pancakes, so frying pans, long-handled, so the pancakes were done over the fire. Or waffle irons are still found.
One more thing I want to ask you about. Enormous cookies at one point. They would make enormous cookies. They were called dead cookies.
Sounds pretty gruesome, doesn't it? It's a recipe in Maria van Rensselaer's cookbook. And it's, again, that example that you find the evidence of customs in the cookbooks. Dood koekjes, dead cookies.
And these were served at funerals?
Were served at funerals. So really they are funeral biscuits, and they were saucer size.
Gee.
And they weren't very good. I made them. I'm sorry to say, but they really improve if you dunk them in hot mulled wine. So they're actually pretty nice.
All right. They served them at funerals, so they called them dead cookies. There's a fascinating book. It is called Food, Drink, and Celebrations of the Hudson Valley Dutch. It is written by Peter G. Rose, who has been our guest. Thank you very much for joining us.